is a game of archetypes. New archetypes are born, some get constant support over the years, old series and old monsters get turned into archetypes, and some archetypes await support until the end of time. But out of all the different series and monsters and cards that have come out in Yu-Gi-Oh! And been turned into archetypes, or been born into such, one series of cards has resisted this change since its inception, that being the Spider series. Spiders are a series of insects based off Australia's favorite creepy crawlies, which debuted all the way back at the very beginning of Yu-Gi-Oh's history, reaching their peak performance sometime between 5Ds and the Zexal era. Yet despite the shared aesthetic, these spiders have never become a proper archetype, and to be honest, I'm not sure if Konami's ever going to do that, but I would like to take a minute to look at these dang old spiders and see exactly what we have to work with. And in order to do so, we're going to have to take a look at the 4 different subcategories of spiders that have spawned over their long history. First off, of course, we have the Normie Spider group, consisting of 3 members, being Kumo Toko, Hunter Spider, and Launcher Spider. Now, of course, Normie monsters have their own little strategies in Yu-Gi-Oh!, but nothing too much to write home about. However, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Has given the Normie Spiders some consistency boost if you want to be taking Kumo Toko out of the ballgame. Definitely a more niche strategy to be doing with the spiders, but it isn't the worst strategy in the world, just incredibly limited considering there's only 3 Normie spiders. But shout out to Launcher Spider, because I always thought he looked cool. Next up, we have the Pseudo Spider archetype, which looks kind of like these. These are monsters, of course, that look like spiders, act like spiders, probably even taste like spiders, but because of varying reasons, they are not going to be part of anything that spiders do in the future, since they're all part of either other archetypes or have nothing to do with the playstyle. These members include things like Naturia's Spider Fang, the original Jirai Gumo, Kumongus, the Sticky Strings Kaiju, who is actually a decent card to be running into a spider deck, Joruri Punk Madame Spider, and ultimately culminating in the Earthbound Immortal Uru, which some might consider the boss of spiders, considering what happened with the anime, but I personally consider this more of an Earthbound Immortal. Now let's get into the real meat potatoes of what makes spiders the spiders. That being their largest subcategory, which I like to affectionately refer to as the defense mode changey synchro spiders. Originally piloted by one Roman Goodwin in the 5Ds anime, one of the most underappreciated villains ever. I mean, all he ever got away with some light genocide on the side. These guys are all about putting your opponent's monsters into defense mode through various means, and then essentially having the spiders have their way with your opponent's monsters. We start off, of course, with the level 1 Dark Spider, which is a level 1 Dark Insect with 0 attack and defense, which once per turn can increase the level of face of insect monster control by 2 until the end phase. And this would have been a very amazing card if it had only just been a gosh darn tuner. I tell you, I don't know why this guy isn't a tuner. You'll see why that's kind of an issue later, but yeah, Dark Spider's a very interesting guy, especially considering that spiders do have some strategies around synchros. You'd like to have a monster that can change monster's level. And I do feel like if this guy had been a tuner, it would have been absolutely amazing, especially back in the day of good old Rocket Man. Probably would have been part of some 30-40 minute combo tutorial about how to put 20 negates on the board turn 1. But unfortunately, Dark Spider, while he has some usefulness in the deck, is not the best of cards, seeing as he is not a tuner. But it is nice that he's not a hard once per turn, so potentially abusable. Next up, of course, we have the Relinquished Spider, a level 2 Earth Insect with 300 attack and 500 defense, who is part of an archetype. He is a relinquished monster, so just chow down on that, other spiders. This guy's an archetype. But yes, this guy has the effect that if you have 4 more insect monsters in the graveyard, you contribute Relinquished Spider to destroy all face-up defense position monsters your opponent controls. Nice little bit of synergy with what the spider's trying to do. Just keep your opponent's monsters on the defensive. Then you contribute this dude off to field nuke him. Unfortunately, this card is a bit of a relic of the past, back when good old Rogeki was on the ban list. So, yeah, unfortunately, Relinquished Spider is just not as viable as he used to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm sure the insect variant of Relinquish is very interesting to play. And, you know, putting 1 copy of this card in your spider deck isn't like the worst idea in the world. It's at least a good flavor test. It's a good bit of a flavor card. So, while Relinquished Spider might be a dated card, it's not the worst thing in the world to be running. Also, I like that he kind of looks like a crawler monster. It's just kind of like a... Hold on. Wait a second. Wait just a second here. Yeah, I'm overthinking it. Now let's get into a monster that really cements home what Spider's trying to do, and that being the level 4 ground spider, an earth insect with 0 attack and 1500 defense, which once per turn, if you control this face-up defense position monster and your opponent summons a monster or multiple monsters, you can change those monsters to defense mode. Wow, this card, it's exactly what you would expect from a starter up in a deck like the Spiders, trying to make your opponent's monsters go into defense mode in order to activate things like Relinquish Spider. But whoever designed Ground Spider really, and I mean really, dropped the ball on this guy and made him go switch. Now, don't get me wrong, having the ability to switch your opponent's monsters to defense mode and having the ability to choose which monster gets switched to defense mode isn't the worst thing in the world. But there's a lot of problems with Ground Spider. Number one, he is a once per turn. It's a soft once per turn, meaning if you have multiples, it's fine. But are you really going to commit to having the 3 of this thing on the board at once? I don't think you are. Also, the fact that, you know, it has to be in face-up defense mode to be activating his effect is a bit asking much, considering I think whoever localized this thought that the game was played like in the anime, you summon monsters face-up defense, which sadly is not the case. But yeah, Ground Spider is a card that it would be your main starter up if you could just put himself in defense. But the funny thing is, with how Spiders run, the best way to get this guy into defense mode is to play the old spell card Stumbling, which is essentially what Ground Spider's trying to do, but 10 times better. I mean, it affects everybody, but it's still better than Ground Spider. So while Ground Spider is what you would assume to be the stardom up of your Spiders locking your opponent's monsters in defense mode, it pales compared to other cards that do the job just so much better. Getting away from Ground Spider, we get into something a lot more interesting. We got the Spider Spider, which is a level 4 earth insect with 1500 attack and 1000 defense, which when destroying a monster's defense position monster by battle, can select and special summon a level 4 or lower insect from your graveyard. Now this guy is actually pretty dang good. You know, the fact that you have a beater in an archetype where you're trying to put your opponent's monsters in defense mode, who revives other monsters once it beats over monsters by battle, that's pretty standard fare. But then you look closer at Spider and realize some really nice things about it. For one, it's not a once per turn at all, meaning if Spider destroys a monster by battle, and you know, you have another Spider in the grave, you can revive that Spider. It can be attack or defense, put in attack mode, attack another monster, revive another Spider. You see where I'm going? You go from 1 monster to 4 really gosh darn quick with Spider in action. As long as your graveyard set up and your opponent's got a bunch of monsters in defense mode, you know, it's possible. It's not easy to pull off, but it is a lot of firepower for an old school 5Ds archetype to be having. So, while Spider, you know, he takes a lot of setup, it's really good effect. Now, granted, his attack's pretty low. Unfortunately, with attack that low, he's the clapping of his cheeks ain't gonna be alerting too many guards. I'll tell you that much. But with a little bit of prep, Spider is absolutely the best Spider in terms of just setting up a board. And I would say in a modern Spider, you won't play less than 3 of this thing, because this guy, he claps them cheeks. Next up, we have Informant Spider, which is a level 4 earth insect monster with 500 attack and 1800 defense, which, when sent to the grave via a card effect from the field, it takes control of a defense position monster your opponent controls. Now, there's a few things good and a few things bad about Informer Spider. Number 1, it only steals opponent's monsters in defense mode, which, again, that is what you're trying to do. And back in the olden 5Ds era, you know, if you put your opponent's synchro in defense, they're not going to be too quick to tribute the darn thing off in fear of the Informant Spider. But it is nice that it can be sent to the grave by any sort of card effect. It is a when effect, unfortunately, so timing is always a bit of a rough thing with whens. But, you know, with a little bit of practice, Informer Spider can be used to steal your opponent's stuff. It's not the worst card in the world to be doing that. I mean, monster stealing is always funny to do, especially if your opponent puts a lot of effort into making their big honka-chonk bosses. But there's not much in Spiders themselves that allows you to, you know, use this effect to its fullest. If Spider's got some more support in the future, I could see this card becoming a 3-off staple. You know, if we just get a Spider card that sends spiders to the graveyard and allows you to trigger off Spider, that would be great. But until then, Informer Spider's a very niche card. There's a lot of old school monster stealers that are legal again, so less need to run Informer, but he's still not a bad member. And this would normally be the part where I make a Solid Snake joke, but I already did that, unfortunately. So here's Raiden instead. Now let's get into something I would consider quite possibly the true boss monster in the main deck of the spiders, being the Mother Spider, a level 6 dark insect with 2300 attack and 1200 defense, which states that if you only have insects in the grave, you can send 2 face-up defense position monsters your opponent controls to the graveyard and summon this card from your hand. Now, this is a very nice card. You know, it's basically Lava Golem, but better. You only have you only can have insects, but you get 2 of your opponent's monsters, once per turn, and you get to summon big old Mother Spider. It's an amazing card. And if you're thinking this don't stand a chance against modern decks, no, you gotta remember, there's this old spell called Earthquake. It basically just puts everything into defense mode. It's great with combination with Mother Spider. Just imagine putting all your opponent's big old Omni Negators into defense and tributing the darn things off. It's pretty dang nice. Pretty dang nice. Now, if only there was just there was an insect that allowed you to maybe search this out from the deck, that would be pretty nice. If only there was such a thing. Oh wait, Resonance Bug. Resonance Bug, perfect combination with Mother Spider. Honorary Spider indeed. A Mother Spider, I could sing its praises all day, but effectively it just allows you to clear your opponent's board, gives you a big boss monster on the board. It's not the biggest spider in the world, but it gets the job done. If your opponent's got a whole bunch of monsters on the board, you just have to get rid of the darn things. This is your ticket to doing so. It's very good. Now, before we get into the Exceed Spiders, let's go ahead over the Spider Spell Trap lineup. Starting off, of course, we have their field spell, the Spider's Web, which states that if a monster declares an attack, it goes to defense mode at the end of the damage step. It cannot change its battle position until the end of its controller's next turn, while the web is face up on the board. This card is absolutely not that good. I'm not gonna lie, it's really not that great of a field spell. I mean, it makes sense for what spiders are trying to do, putting your opponent's monsters into defense mode after they've attacked you, but you kind of want to stop your opponent from running over your spiders, so this is kind of irrelevant to be had. Plus, the fact that it works on your own monsters. I mean, yes, spiders can fall into their own webs, but that's real life. I don't want that in my anime cards. No, sir. I don't want that to happen at all. So, while Spider Web is important if you're going to be playing your old boy Uru, it's really not a good field spell for spiders to have. I would have much preferred this to, I don't know, give them additional summoning, maybe allow for, sending spiders to the graveyard for Informer. Things of that nature would have been so much better. So, pretty underwhelming there. Next, we have the Spider's Lair, which is a continuous spell that reads that once per turn, you can select a face-up insect you control. And whilst Lair is on the field, any monster that battles with those monsters, it goes to defense mode at the end of the battle phase. It cannot change its battle position while Lair is on the board. Certainly an interesting card, I guess. I'm not sure exactly the full point of this card. I mean, you have to select face-up insects. You have to have that insect battle an opponent's monster, and that opponent's monster needs to survive. I guess if you were trying to facilitate putting your opponent's monsters in defense mode and go tributing them off with Mother Spider, that makes some sense. If they had like a piercing attack monster, that would also have made sense. But really, Lair is a very confusing card. It's slow as balls and just really not great. If you're going to be switching monsters to defense mode and spiders, you're playing things like No Entry or Zero Gravity. Stuff like that. Chain Tragedy. That's what you're going to do. But playing Spider's Lair, no, you're not going to play this card. Next up, we have Spider Egg, the trap card of the spiders, which states that if your opponent directly attacks you, you have 3 more insects in the grave, you negate the attack, and summon 3 spider tokens in attack mode. Now, this card is obviously meant to facilitate some tribute fodder for your Uru, but it's really not that good of a card if you think about it. I mean, for one thing, yeah, you get a whole bunch of tokens, they're on attack mode. Yeah, it stops one attack. You're giving your opponent 3 new attack targets, and you're going to be taking almost full damage from them attacking over these eggs. Now, if you time it right, maybe you'll keep all the spider tokens, or at least most of them, enough to make an Uru or what have you. But it's just not a great card. It has nothing to do with putting monsters in defense mode. It has nothing to do with what spiders are trying to do. It's a one-off thing that was used to summon Uru like one time, and I think it could have been a lot better. A retrain of this card that allowed you to get out some more insects would have been great, but sadly that's not the case. And lastly, for the spell traps, is a trap called Layer Wire, which is not strictly a spider card, but you know, it's got Underground Arachnid on it, so we're going to count it. Basically, you just remove a play an insect from the grave and select and destroy a monster of your opponent's. Pretty straightforward card. There's nothing else to say about it. It's just a very straightforward card. You're going to be having insects in the grave. That's what you're doing. You can remove that resonance bug from your grave. There you go. That's all you need to think about it. So, Layer Wire, definitely a card to play in some spiders. But of course, before we go into the Exceeds, we have one other member to talk about. You think I was going to forget our best girl? No. Underground Arachnid, the synchro of the spiders, which is a level 6 earth insect synchro with 2400 attack and 1200 defense, requiring a dark tuner and a non-tuner insect, which when attacking, your opponent can activate spell trap to the end of damage step. It can select a face-up monster the opponent controls and equip it to itself, and if it would be destroyed in battle, Underground Arachnid can get rid of that equipped monster instead. Amazing synchro for back in the day, just stopping opponents from playing anything in the battle phase. It can just take an opponent's monster and equip it right to Arachnid, get rid of any sort of floating effects and what have you. It's an amazing card, but the big issue is that spiders don't have a tuner. that is the worst. They don't have their own tuner to make this thing, which is the most bizarre thing. Now, you have to understand, in the 5Ds anime, they had like the dark tuners that were like, you know, subtracting levels, something, you know, old Arctic tried to do, but even they couldn't make that mechanic any interesting. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, Konami never gave spiders their own tuner. I think that was Dark Spider. I think. I could be very wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was what the case was. And yeah, for some reason, Dark Spider wasn't tuner, and spiders didn't get a tuner. And plus, with the level of this thing being 6, it's not the cleanest in spiders. I mean, if Relinquished Spider had been the tuner, that would have been a lot better, especially with combined with Spider. But Underground Arachnid is a great synchro in theory for spiders. But unfortunately, it just falls flat for the fact that spiders have no way of getting this out on their own. Now let's get into the very interesting last segment of the spiders, being of the Exceed spiders, which premiered in good old Zexalera, and I believe they showed it in the manga at one point, but I forget exactly what the context of that was. But anyway, we have some modern cards here, and they show. We have the Mother Spider Splitter, which is a level 5 dark insect with 0 attack and 2300 defense, which states that if you control no monsters, you can summon this card from the hand. And by tributing our Mother Spider, you can have special summon except for Exceeds, but you summon up to 3 baby spiders from the hand and or deck, and if you do, they become level 5, but cannot be used as material except for dark Exceeds monsters, and you can only use this effect once per turn. Now, of course, this is a very modern card, and it shows one thing, it's got all these once per turn effects, and number 2, it summons a whole bunch of stuff and restricts you to Exceeds, but the Exceeds are pretty dang good. The Mother Spider does cheat out 3 monsters and makes them all level 5, so it's pretty easy to get into some Exceeds. But what Exceeds you're going into, well, that's more better explained by the next monster, which is the Baby Spider, which is a level 3 dark insect with 0 attack and defense, which states that you contribute a dark monster to increase the level of all baby spiders by the level of said tributed monster, and you can pay half your life and banish this guy from the grave, and attach a material from a dark Exceed to target a dark monster in the grave and summon it. But you can only use this effect once per turn, of course. So, very interesting idea. So, I'll just lay the cards on the table. The whole idea of the baby spiders is to tribute off one of them, and then you're going to overlay into a rank 10 dark Exceeds monster, that being a Ravenous Tarantula, who we'll get into in a minute, and then you go from other monsters. But there is a lot of things you could do, especially if there were more dark spiders. I mean, a lot of them are earth. A lot of them are earth, and a few of them are dark. But if you're playing a lot of dark spiders, baby spiders got a lot of stuff to go with it. So, of course, for the Exceed Spiders, we have a few members, but let's go for the important ones first. We have numbers 35, Venomous Tarantula. We have the number 84, Pain Gainer, and the number 77 of the Seven Sins. Starting off with our Venomous Tarantula, of course, he's a rank 10 Exceed, which states that all your monsters gain attack and defense equal to the difference between your life points and your opponent's. And while it has Exceeds material, every time your opponent special summons a monster, it inflicts 600 damage to your opponent. And he can also attach materials to destroy all monsters your opponent controls with attack less than this guy's attack. Pretty loaded effect. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a pretty dang insane effect that doesn't go into effect too often considering how this bunch works. But having a monster that can give all your monsters a boost if you happen to have less or more life points than your opponent is pretty dang good. You know, it's a great comeback card and a great way to finish off the opponent. It has a floodgate effect sort of thing if your opponent's going to be comboing off with monsters. And, well, it's not a quick effect. You do have the ability to nuke your opponent's board. Very nice guy to start off with, but of course, the next part of this is number 84, Pain Gainer, a rank 11 Dark Exceeds monster with 0 attack and defense, which can be Exceed summoned by using a rank 8, 9, or 10 Dark Exceed with 2 or more materials. So you stack this guy on top of the Venomous Tarantula. He gains defense equal to the combined ranks of Exceeds you control times 200, burns your opponent for 600 damage for each of your opponent's spell traps that they happen to be activating, and he can detach material to destroy all your monsters with defense less than this guy's. So you get the idea. You're trying to go from Tarantula to Pain Gainer, and hey, if you have a baby spider in your graveyard and it means to put a material on the spider, you know, there's a potential that using baby spider to make your Tarantula, then going into Pain Gainer, banish the tributed baby spider, and then, you know, bring back the Venomous Tarantula as long as there's another dark insect in your graveyard. There's a potential to get both these guys on the board at the same time and just keep burning your opponent every time they do something. Or, of course, you can do that too, but there's also the option of going into our final monster, the number 77 of the Seven Sins. Dark rank 12 Fiend with 4,000 attack, 3,000 defense, which is summoned using a rank 10 or 11 Dark Exceeds monster. If summoned doing this, then you can't use his effects for that turn, but once per turn, you can attach 2 materials from the Seven Sins to banish as many special summon monsters your opponent controls as possible, then attach one of those monsters to the Seven Sins as a material, and if he would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, you can attach material instead. A big old honkin' chonkin' boss at the end of this spidery rainbow. Absolute field clearance. He's basically AA Zeus before the AA Zeus. He's AA Zeus, but you get to keep your board. It's essentially what he does. So, absolutely goated monster. And again, with the baby spider, you can detach one of the other spiders, whoever you need. Granted, you need to be able to put materials on the spider, which I would hope future Exceed spider support would do. But the potential of having Seven Sins alongside either of the other big old spiders is nothing to scoff at. The only downside, of course, with Seven Sins is he's a fiend. Everybody else has been an insect, but no, Seven Sins is unfortunately a fiend monster, which does mean that if you're playing him, Mother Spider might be off of a menu, but it depends on what you're running and it depends on the situation. But so long as Seven Sins doesn't hit the graveyard, you should be fine. You should be fine. But yes, Seven Sins, Pain Gainer, Tarantula, amazing cards. I've played them many times on trains and they're great there. And in Exceed Spiders, pretty dang good too. Now we got 3 monsters left to talk about today. Let's first talk about number 37, Hope Woven Dragon Spider Shark. Wow, that's a mouthful. And we'll go over this guy real quick. He's really not that important to this archetype. He's more of a shark card than anything, because he needs water monsters and he's not an insect, or he's hardly a spider. He's actually part of the shark archetype. He's like Relinquished Spider. He's part of a separate archetype, but spiders don't get the B archetypes. I mean, it's a nice monster for lowering your opponent's attacks, and if he does get destroyed, you can just revive a monster from the grave. It's an interesting card, but nothing to talk about much for spiders in the Exceed variety. Lastly, for the Exceed boys, we have number 70, Malevolent Sin, rank 4 Dark Insect Exceed, 2400 attack, 1200 defense, who can attach material to target and banish a monster for 1 turn to your opponent's next standby phase. After damage step, if he does attack, he gets 300 attack and increases his rank by 3. The basic idea being that you keep attacking with Sin to make him get bigger and bigger, and then you overlay into 7 Sins or such. but it's easier to just go through the baby spiders to do that with Sin. And also, you can't make Malevolent Sin with the baby spiders. If you needed like 2 or more like level 4 monsters, or level 5 I should say, that would be something. But he needs level 4, so funnily enough, it's easier for those synchro spiders to make Malevolent Sin, thanks to our good friend Spider. So it's a weird card. At least it's a spider. It is a spider. Let's keep it at that. And of course, the last member of the spider archetype to briefly mention is our good boy, the Linky Stinky Spider, who is normal monster support. So if normal spiders become a thing in the future, this guy will become legendary. He will become legendary in the future if normal spiders become a thing. But otherwise, he's a Linky Spider. That's what he is. Spiders are a weird bunch. They have this general play style based off the original Synchro Spider's defense mode shenanigans, and they do have a decent variety to their effects, but honestly, that's about it. They lack any form of searching, they don't have a tuner for a Synchro-based archetype, their best play extender is a 1500 point beat stick, and their spell traps are horribly, underwhelmingly abysmal. I do believe that there is some real potential for spiders to become a viable strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh!, especially considering all of the cool insect support that we've gotten over the years. And I've also seen some pretty cool spider custom support cards that shows that there's a real interest in spiders becoming an archetype in and of themselves. But only time is going to tell if Konami's ever going to make anything out of all that. Thank you all very much for watching today's episode of Card Talks. If you did enjoy, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Helps me keep the channel going, helps me keep motivated to make these videos possible. I know we asked for spiders a long time ago, but it's finally high time that we got down to it. I'm glad that we did. Do look forward to a couple more episodes of Card Talks. I want to at least get the Summon Skull video out this month. And we're going to try very hard to do Venoms for December in time for maybe they'll get support. Who do know. But anyway, hope y'all enjoyed today's episode. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, your boy Memphis signing off. I'll see you guys again very soon. Later.